Hi guys, welcome back. We are on chapter 17, page 154 of The Barren Grounds by David A. Robertson. Okay, so they're on their mission, their quest to find the human and free the summer birds and bring them back to Mizwa so Mizwa can leave the frozen time and enter into the green time again. Okay. But we are a little bit scared. We know there's a wolf around, and we're just a little bit concerned that perhaps a giant might arrive. Who knows? Okay, chapter 17. Morgan had a dream. She was standing in the corner of the room again, and the room was lit by a color like the sunset. Warm hues spread across the walls like paint. The light came from a lamp resting on a side table. The woman, Morgan's mother, was holding her as a young child, humming that same song, humming the song and crying softly, trying not to wake her. Kiss kiss katataso, her mother whispered to the child. Kiss kiss katataso. Don't forget about who you are. Then Morgan was the child. She looked up at her mother, reached for her, touched her cheek. Soft, warm, damp from crying. Morgan felt tears against her fingertips. The word was spoken over and over, from her mother's lips to her ears. Kiskatataso. There was a knock on the front door. Footsteps moved towards it. Mwach, mwach. Better check my pronunciation. Mwach. So it means no, no, no. Her mother looked towards the bedroom door. She was whispering desperately. It was too late. Morgan heard the front door open. People came inside. She heard angry voices. Her mother stood up from the chair, panicked, repeating, "Mwach, mwach." She backed away so quickly that she knocked over the lamp. It fell to the ground and shattered. The light went out and it was totally black. Morgan wailed in her mother's arms, both of them stuck in the dark. Kiss kiss stataso, her mother said to her, kissing her cheeks, her nose, her mouth. Kiss kiss stataso. Don't forget who you are. The door opened and light flooded into the room. Morgan was standing in the corner of the room again, a teenaged girl. She was crying too, and she watched as a man and a woman came inside. The man held her mother back. The woman took the child from her mother's arms. Mwach, don't take my girl. Morgan sat up in a cold sweat. She was back in the hut. The fire had long since gone out, leaving behind charcoaled wood and a chill in the air. It was morning. Daylight seeped into the hut through its stitching. She could see Ochek, Eric, and Eli. They'd been sleeping and stirred now only because of Morgan's outburst. "What's going on?" Eli asked. Morgan kept looking around the hut as though she might be able to see the woman taking the child and stop her. Was the man still holding her mother back? Then she shook her head and closed her eyes tight, willing the vision to leave. She needed to forget the dream, because dreams were meant to be forgotten. "Nothing," she said. "Sorry." "You called out no in the good words," Ochek pointed out. So he's saying, you're saying no, Mwach, in Cree. "No, I didn't." Morgan touched her lips in disbelief. "Yes, you did," Eli said. "Mwach, no." "I think I'd remember because it came out of my mouth," Morgan said. "You might have thought you said no in your language, but it came out in the good words." Eric was stretching joyfully like a cat. "I need some air." Morgan got up. Her entire body was shaking. It's nothing to be ashamed of, Iquesis, Ochek said. It's not that I spoke Cree, it's what I dreamed. Morgan walked to the flap, ready to leave the hut, but stopped there. And despite her best intentions to forget the dream, the nightmare, she played it back, clear and full. Watch, she whispered. Had she said it? The moment she woke up was the only moment she couldn't remember. She pushed the flap open, walked outside, and what she saw there made her scream. Wolf tracks circled the outside of the hut, then led away up the mountain. The direction they needed to go. What is it now? Ochek asked. Tracks. Morgan couldn't take her eyes off the marks in the snow. It was a relatively calm morning, with the sun reflecting off the snow and causing Morgan's eyes to tear up. She wanted wind to push snow over the tracks so she could pretend they were never there. The others came outside and saw the paw prints. What do we do? Morgan asked. Go back? We can't turn back. Ochek started to take down the hut. The earlier we start moving, the farther we'll get before dark. The others helped. When they were finished and had their packs on, Morgan grabbed Eli's hand and held it tightly. She was determined not to let it go as long as they were outside the hut and walking. Eric had the same idea, finding Ochek's paw and clutching it. Up they went, staying close to one another at all times, which meant that whenever Morgan or Eli fell back, the others did too. There was no wind, which really was a blessing, but the resulting quiet made for an undeniable tension. They heard every sound and were sure that each sound was the wolf stalking them. And it may well have been. More than once, a member of the group thought they saw it pacing behind thick patches of snow-covered pines, which were littered here and there up the mountain. A large beast with dark gray fur and sun-yellow eyes. But on second look, the wolf was always gone, and they began to wonder whether they were seeing things. I don't think we'd all hallucinate the same thing, like the exact same thing, Morgan pointed out. Nobody could argue against that. The higher they went, the harder it was to talk, because while the air had always been cold, it was getting thinner. The mountain sloped gradually but persistently, and they were following the suggestion of a path, which, in the green time, might have been an actual path. It wound this way and that, around and through the trees, but always higher, always closer to the summit, which didn't seem any closer than when they'd started out. My legs are burning, Morgan said, still walking hand in hand with Eli. There's this stair climber in the weight room at school, and this is like going on it and never coming off. Mine are too, Eli said. It feels like a trap, she said. What do you mean a trap? Like Eric is setting us up? He asked. I can hear you, Eric said in a sing-song voice. No, Morgan said. A trap by the wolf. It couldn't know we are coming here, not to begin with, Eli said. They both took little gasps of air every few words because of the physical excursion and the ever-thinning air. Exertion, not excursion. Exertion and ever-thinning air. That doesn't mean it's not planning something, she said. It's circumstance. It's the wolf's good fortune. That's probably how it sees it anyway, like Ochek when he saw Eric. I can still hear you, Eric said. We can't turn back now, Eli said, echoing what Ochek had said. I'm not saying we should. I'm just worried, that's all, Morgan said. I am too, he admitted. They walked for a few more minutes, and then Morgan continued as though they'd never stopped talking. It's just, she said, we're climbing up a mountain, and we're getting more tired, And we're all hungry. And who's to say it's not just waiting until we're too tired and too hungry before it decides it's dinner time? You don't need to make us more worried, Eli said. They followed the path through a small grove of pine trees. Morgan was thankful each time the path brought them through trees because she could use them to hoist herself up forward and upward. What if the wolf just pounces on us, even if we're all together? Do you think Ochek could fight it off? I used to go out on the land with my Mushum, my grandpa, Eli said. Sometimes I'd watch the animals with him just to see what they did. You know, how they went about their day and stuff like that. Watch them build shelters or sleep or eat or hunt, all of that. And what's your point? She asked. I saw a fisher once, he said. It killed a beaver, just like that. The beaver didn't even have a chance. A beaver is not a wolf, she said plainly. Beavers are herbivores, aren't they? Is that supposed to make me feel better? It made me curious about them, he said. So I started watching videos and reading about them. They're pretty awesome. They're talking about you, Eric tugged on Ochek's paw excitedly. Yes, Ochek sighed. I know they are. There was truth to what Eli had said. Ochek was awesome. After all, an entire village relied on him to provide them with food. They even hunt porcupines, you know, he said. Really? Even if they get stuck with their quills or whatever? She asked. I guess, he said. I mean, she said, sure, I guess that's better than a beaver, but still, a porcupine isn't a wolf. I know, he snapped, obviously frustrated. How about we just stick together and hope for the best? Stick together, Eric chuckled. I get it, because of the porcupine and how it can stick somebody with its quills? We call that a pun on Earth, Morgan said. I kind of like that sort of joke, Eric said. They're very punny. Could you children not encourage her? Ochek said. They came through the trees and were back out in the open, headed into a long stretch of undisturbed snow. This was a relief, because it meant that the wolf wasn't near them for the time being. But none of them was foolish enough to think that it had given up its pursuit. The sunlight glittered off the mountainside, and it looked like a waterfall of stars. At the next group of trees, they sat down in the middle of the grove, and Eli made a fire. Nearby lay a felled pine tree that was thin and long dead. Come here, watch this, Isquesis, Ochek said. He used a small hatchet to cut the tree into smaller pieces. Then had Morgan retrieve 2 forked sticks from the ground. Together they cut down a green branch from one of the live trees. Morgan held it down and Ochek chopped it off. Ochek drove the 2 forked sticks into the ground on either side of the fire and suspended the green stick over the fire with either end of it secured against the forked sticks. Wow, she said, that seemed way harder when I watched you and Eli do that. Now you have a spit, so you can cook over the fire, Ochek said. Well done. Thank you, Morgan said proudly. Next thing you know, I'll be making fires too. And what'll Eli do? Lie back and relax, Eli laughed, then did just that for a moment. There's always something to do, Ochek said. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Video 2 will be up shortly. Bye, guys.